All right, we are live. Here we are again, another week. And this is an extra special week. Here I'm joined by my friend Neb, local builder, creator of Daisy. And we're going to be talking Nostr stuff today. So, what's up, Neb? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here.
Very cool. There's a lot of the pleb devs that have been talking about Nostr, and I know everyone's curious with Nostr. So this is something that's been on the back burner for a while, kind of getting into Nostr, how it works, what you can build on it, what other people are building on it. So there's really a lot in the space, and it's like developing crazy fast, as everyone can see.
Yeah, it's been, I feel like if I just take kind of a day away, not trying to follow up or follow along with anything, I'll come back and there's like 10 new features across 6 new clients that people have made, and it's new nips, and it's just kind of, it's a little tough to keep up with it, but it's pretty cool to see everything being built out
Yeah.
so organically.
Yeah, how many nips are there now?
Well, it's 40 so or 20 so, but
Okay.
there's 40 PRs for proposals.
Uh-huh.
Most of these I haven't even looked at.
Damn.
Because you can see all of them have like 20 or so comments. So it's too much to keep up with almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those that don't know what a NIP is, it's a Nostr improvement proposal.
Yep.
So, yeah, something like that. So we have BIPs and Bitcoin, NIPs and Nostr. NIPs are a little bit fun, a little bit more fun. But yeah, I mean, so there's a lot to cover in the Nostr space, like more than you could cover in like a single kind of hour or whatever. But I thought it'd be good to just start with kind of an overview of the protocol, and then like looking at a actual implementation, like someone building a project with it, which is why I reached out to you. So thanks for doing this. But first, I would just like to talk to you about your coding journey, developer journey, and then kind of your path into doing Nostr stuff, if you're down for that.
Yeah. So I was originally going to school for aerospace engineering.
Oh, really?
And then I took, after my first year coming back, my sophomore year, the first semester, I took a C++ class, and kind of fell in love with programming more than, like, I had made some like simple websites and stuff in high school, but didn't really do much JavaScript or like building these apps. So that was kind of the intro to that, and just really liked it. And was going to change my major to do computer science. And then just while I was waiting for a new semester to come around, figured I would try to do one of these coding boot camps. And then thought, like, if, worst case scenario, I'll end up back at school in the fall. So went to one in California and spent like 3 months just coding from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And at the end of that, I ended up getting a job working at Walmart on their website. And was just kind of doing a lot of web stuff in my job, and then just trying to kind of build projects in my free time. Just stupid little apps that no one really used or cared about, but just something to kind of keep building and trying out new stuff.
Yeah.
Then after I was there for a little bit, I joined this crypto company pretty early in my Bitcoin journey, and was there for a few years. Kind of started getting more interested in Bitcoin specifically, and being less interested in in this other crypto side of it. And then got a job at Strike after that, where I worked on their web team, doing a lot of web stuff there. And still this whole time kind of trying to work on these projects outside of work, just to keep learning and trying new things. And that's how I ended up doing this Daisy Nostr client, just kind of for fun, to try and learn more about this Nostr protocol.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's something that I've always done, and something that the more that I hear it, it seems like it's a necessary kind of piece of this, like building side projects in your free time, and especially if you want to work on something like in the Bitcoin space, you kind of have to do this, because I had a pretty similar route. Like, I started out a little bit self-taught, didn't get very far, went to college for a few semesters, dropped out because I could tell they were wasting my time, and then I went to boot camp, and kind of just learned the traditional web skills that you learn, and still had to grind quite a bit to get my first job. But even though I applied to like every Bitcoin company, there wasn't really the opportunity at the time. This was like, I guess, the last bear market technically. And so, I had to go take that fiat job first, just that regular tech job. And, from there, it's kind of like, hey, I made it. Like, I went from zero, or went from wherever I was, to like getting that engineer job. But, if you want to work in Bitcoin, like, you kind of got to explore those skills in your free time, and kind of show a level of work and just passion on the side that people can recognize. So that's like a common theme I see across people that end up working at Bitcoin companies, and something that just I try and like reinforce, like build up those side projects, like start to interact with Bitcoin or Lightning in just the little ways that you can, and kind of build up from there, and then build simple projects. And this is one reason I also like the stuff that you do, because you've always done these like pretty simple, just like PlebDev projects that are cool ideas, and you execute on them and make them look nice. And like, I think that's the way, like when you're learning.
Yeah. And that's, like, I've done a little bit of interviewing at one of the companies I've worked for. And, I think I've just seen it when I've applied to jobs, is that if you have a project that you can show someone, that's like so much more valuable than, here's my resume or my LinkedIn or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just like some little bit of code that runs, maybe it's deployed somewhere. Even if it's, the person doesn't really care about actually using it, just giving them something to show, like, yeah, you can build something and deploy it somewhere that some people can use, is pretty big. And I think that's one thing where I think like the pleb wallet that you worked on is like a perfect project. Because not many people would probably really use it, other than maybe yourself, like the person who built it. But just showing you that these, I could build this little app and it connects to Bits, and I can receive or send Bitcoin using APIs is like a perfect project to show someone when you're looking for a job.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I definitely, like, as just a regular web developer, I was trying for probably like a good year and a half to like meaningfully interact with Bitcoin or Lightning. But the libraries didn't exist, the tutorials, the guides didn't exist. I didn't really know how to get over that barrier of like, okay, I can make a basic front end, a basic server, but how do I then talk to Bitcoin? And so that's what's been so exciting about like doing all these PlebDevs workshops, is like exploring the different ways where you might start doing that, and just getting to experience all of this fun that I felt like I missed out on when I was like a junior developer that was like hungry to get my hands on Bitcoin and Lightning. You just had one of your projects, the US debt clock, up there. You wanna talk about that?
Um, yeah, this is, I think, a good example of um, just like a simple project that can kind of be fun to build. Um, so I really like this website, which is tracking all of the U.S. debt and tons of other stats. So wanted to build something kind of similar to that with like a Bitcoin, uh, some Bitcoin stats in there. Um, and so I ended up with this. It's a super simple little website. I fetch some data from the U.S. Treasury once a day, and then put it in this database. Um, and then I also fetch the Bitcoin price. And then when you load the website, it'll do a little bit of math to try and figure out, what's the rate of change on the debt. That's how I get this increasing number. And then I've just do a bunch of little calculations to get, the debt for the taxpayer per person.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some Bitcoin stats that are kind of fun. And you can see I added this little counter, so I've had 7,300 visitors.
Oh, nice.
Which is not, a lot, but it's for these little side projects. I think it's one of the most popular things I've ever built. So it's kind of just pretty cool to track.
I love that idea. You just put a counter on your front end that just increments every time it's opened.
Yeah, because I kept at least when it's the most popular was when I first launched it, and some people shared it on Twitter, and I would be, just like looking at my database to see how many visitors there's been. So after doing that a couple times, I'm like, I should just stick it on the website. So if I ever want to check, I just load it and then, scroll down. But yeah, it's kind of, I built this thing in like a couple days. And then I've kind of had some ideas on like other stuff I'd like to add, but it works. So it's kind of just been nice to have it in. Once you get something that works, I think then you can kind of just leave it and then come back to it at another time if you want to. But now I have this little piece that it's like, here's something I built. You can go to the website, you can check out the code. It's just something I can kind of show off when I'm looking for, to work somewhere, work on something, just to give someone a little taste of, here's something I can build.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it really is such a huge advantage when you're trying to get that first engineering role, or even the second. Like you kind of think of the competitive landscape of the other people that are trying to get the same job as you. Like, okay, they probably have a portfolio. They probably have some kind of education, whether it's a boot camp or a college degree. And they probably have like one or two projects, maybe school projects, maybe a to-do list app. But if you can figure out something to make that's like real, that's solving some kind of real niche problem that no one else has done, that shows that you didn't just like build some template to do app, but you like thought of an idea yourself and implemented it. That's like, I think that's the highest tier of like of side project. And I kind of had this in my own journey where when I was at boot camp, like I did a number of these kind of to-do list app kind of projects that they were fine, they looked good. Some of them were full stack, they're deployed, all of that. But it was actually two like random projects I did that got me the most attention when I was first applying to my job. And one of them was just like a Conway's Game of Life, like little simulator, which I just took that from a template. But that just happened to be something that not a lot of people, I guess, at the time had done. And then another app that I had made was called FB Explorer. And it just was something that, this was like my unique creation where I wanted like a simple UI that I could download all of my Facebook data through and explore it without that data being stored anywhere. And so I built a simple like front-end app to do that and called it FB Explorer. and I got probably like 10 users or something like that. But it was still impressive enough for the companies because they're seeing all of these kind of cut and dry developers who just make template apps. And then they came across me, and I had made something of my own accord, of my own idea. I had to figure out stuff on my own. And they just got like kind of excited talking to me about that. And I could tell that like, wow, that was a huge advantage there. And then when you take that to the next level, kind of into the Bitcoin space, if you can make that kind of project and have it touch anything with Bitcoin or the idea space around Bitcoin, then that's just like, that's the ultimate advantage you can get, like getting something like that on your portfolio.
Yeah, and I think I would recommend people to try and, think of this idea that a lot of people are going to want to use it or think it's, don't try to build, at least with your just kind of doing these side projects or just some projects to maybe add to your portfolio. I wouldn't spend a lot of time like trying to come up with this killer app, something that's going to go mainstream and there's going to be millions of users. Just try to build something that you want or wish existed. So even if you only build it and you're only ever going to be the only user or person to ever use it, if it's something that you want that doesn't exist, I think that really helps in motivating yourself to build something. So like for this US debt site, I wanted a website where I could go and see, what percentage of Bitcoin is compared to the US debt. Because I couldn't find that anywhere reliably. So I built this website. Now I can just go to it and see it's 1.45%. But then if you're kind of just building something for yourself, I think it's a lot more fun to build like that. Because it's like you're solving a problem that you are running into instead of, some weird thing that maybe a lot of people will use, but you don't really care about. I think it's a lot easier to lose interest if you try to do something like that.
Yeah, I've definitely had that problem, like coming up with these Goliath ideas for these super big projects and just sinking a bunch of time into it. And then when all's said and done, like maybe I learned some stuff and I got some experience, but it's just kind of another ghost repo sitting in my GitHub that never gets deployed.
Yeah.
And I have like a lot of those. People are always like, "Oh, Austin, I can't believe how many repos you have," because I have like 180 or something. And I'm like, well, probably 120 or 150 of those are, what are you at, 107?
107.
Nice.
But yeah, most of mine probably are these debt projects that I haven't done anything with for a long time.
Yeah. One other thing that's cool with this is like something I point out a lot, kind of an insight. Like once you have just enough skill to like kind of do stuff on the front end and then make API calls, then all of a sudden this whole world is opened up to you, where once you know how to make API calls and sort of read API documentation, then there's this whole world of data out there. Like any data you can think of in the whole world is out there for you to grab and use as a developer. And you just think about that and it's like, how many problems can you solve by just combining X data set and Y data set and finding some, unique data point or unique way to display information out of it? There's really an unlimited space of ideas that you can explore there. And that's kind of what this is. This is like a simple version of that. You're just taking an API that was already out there, the US debt clock, and then you're just like basically just pulling the Bitcoin price and you're matching those two together. And it's like, boom, there's an idea.
And most of these APIs are free to use. Unless there's some obscure stuff that maybe you have to pay for it. But yeah, both of these were free APIs. A good example is...
Oh, I've heard about this.
Wrong. One second. This is like one of the coolest projects I think that's been built in a while. Is this like calendar, but with Bitcoin blocks? Is like the date source, and all of this I'm pretty sure is just built with the mempool.space API, and then maybe doing some math on the front end. But you can build like these crazy things with just like a single API if you have this, interesting idea on how to display the data in a way that hasn't been displayed before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've thought of that too. It's like if you can use an API, maybe if you can add a database, you can basically build anything, any type of app or website, just with those kind of basic building blocks.
Oh yeah. It's crazy. I had a very similar idea to something like this like 2 years ago when I was trying to think of basically PlebDev projects. I was trying to think of like what's the next thing that I could build that has something to do with Bitcoin that I know I would be able to do. And at the time, I wasn't at a place where I was really like talking to Lightning nodes yet or working at a lower level. And I'd kind of scoped out an idea for something like this, like, hey, what if I just take like this mempool data, like the block data, and I give you some UI that maybe lets you save events or save photos or save notes, and they're attached to, a block height or something like that. And really, that's not even quite what this is. This is just kind of like displaying like a calendar based off of it. But, just even in the space of like the idea of block height and the block time, like there's probably 100 different app ideas you could build off of that. And I know there was like a trend kind of last year and a half ago, where people were building a bunch of different mempool UIs. Like obviously mempool space was the big first one, but there's like Bitfeed and Blockfeed, I think. And, kind of people are just taking this data and going crazy with it, like using all of these cool libraries to display and visualize it. And people just love eating that up in the Bitcoin space. And so that's always just like a great kind of space to think in if you're trying to think of like a simple project that you can make that has Bitcoin in the name. So yeah, this is a cool one. Yeah, something I want to ask you, like, how did you get into Bitcoin specifically? Like, I know you were at this crypto company. Like, were you into crypto before that? Had you heard of Bitcoin? How did that go?
Yeah, I think I have a similar path to a lot of people, where I had heard of Bitcoin before and then finally kind of started looking into it closer in 2017. And then looked at Ethereum and said, okay, Bitcoin sucks. Why Ethereum is the best thing? And then, I was into crypto and worked at a crypto company. And I mean, really enjoyed it. I worked with a great group of people. Don't have any bad feelings about it, but while I was there, kind of saw this trend at their company and a lot of other projects towards centralization, to kind of follow along with a lot of user experiences that people would expect to see in traditional websites and apps, to get that similar behavior, and a lot of times requires this movement towards centralizing infrastructure or data storage, where I didn't really see kind of long-term success with that. So, but at the same time, Bitcoin is kind of just ticking along, and I just kind of saw it separate as this entirely different thing, and have been kind of obsessed with it ever since that, and haven't cared too much about these other crypto projects.
Yeah, so you kind of saw firsthand that they're actively making trade-offs for growth, for user
Yeah, and
experience.
I mean, I was making those, like I was writing the code for those trade-offs, so I saw it firsthand.
Yeah. No, and something like an insight I've gained since I've really been thinking about like the developer space in Bitcoin, especially like the application developer space, especially from the perspective of new developers, fresh out of college students, stuff like that. Like I've kind of seen that Ethereum and Solana and these other ecosystems, they're eating our lunch when it comes to their developer ecosystem. They're recruiting way more developers. More developers are making more stuff, and they're doing that because once again they're making the same kind of trade-off. They're making like growth trade-offs. They're doing everything they can to grow, because that's kind of how Silicon Valley works. That's how the Web 2 tech era worked, was making all these trade-offs, raise more money, even though you're losing money, just to keep growing, because you'll grow your way out of it. And yeah, a lot of the reason is because you can go. I talk to more and more pleb devs, and they tell me very similar things. Like they got started on Ethereum, and it's because you can go and you can say npmi Web3, and you can get the Web3 library, and then you
Yeah.
can, in 20 minutes, make your shitty dApp, post on testnet or even post on mainnet, and like spam everyone's node with your like stupid app, and you can get to that moment, you can get to that win like really quickly. And so that's why, and getting to wins, it's super important when you're starting out. And so these young developers, they're like, hey, I want to, work at the cutting edge. I want to work with what's cool, what's happening. So they go into AI or Web3, and they're going to go right for the easiest to access thing. They're going to go right to the place that's like, hey, we'll help you if you're a new developer. And yeah, these other chains, they have these other projects, really, they have the budget to do that. They hire marketing teams, they throw events, they have tons of developer advocates and stuff like that. And so, I think part of what needs to happen in the Bitcoin space is that we do the same. I mean, not spend a bunch of top-down money and have like a top-down organization of making a developer ecosystem, but from the bottom up, making more guides, more resources, more libraries, and kind of defining what the path is to getting to build a Bitcoin application or a Lightning application. Like, what is
Yeah.
the pathway to do that? It's so early that really the people that do it are often, they're just kind of ready. They were experienced from the last era of tech. They have all of this prerequisite knowledge of application building, and then they learn some Bitcoin protocol and they can go to action. But if you're tackling all of that from zero, there's not a happy path at the moment through it. And so that's been one of my insights for sure. And it's also why, like, if you're a pleb dev and you want to work on Bitcoin, chances are you might need to get that fiat tech job at first, or that starting job at first, because the space is still so small, and you need to build up those fundamental skill sets, kind of just become a bit of a professional, and then you can, kind of step up to the call in the Bitcoin space.
hmm And yeah, and then I mean, also I would say kind of while you're maybe getting this job is there's still so many open source projects with Bitcoin that you can help out on.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like fixing this tiny little bug that probably isn't a very big deal. There's a lot of times where, the owner of the project or the people working on it just don't really care to fix certain things just because they don't have the time or it's not a huge priority. So there are a lot of ways that you still can, even with like kind of limited experience or knowledge, help out in these Bitcoin projects. And even if it's not a code change, it's, testing a pull request to make sure it is fixed, or making sure certain issues are well defined, or you have reproducible bugs that you found when you're testing things. That can go a long way to help out.
Oh yeah, and I'll show this. I mentioned this in the Discord, but right now, Bitcoin Magazine is doing like a promotion where you can get a free industry ticket to Bitcoin 2023, and apparently years beyond that. I haven't confirmed that, but that's what Andrew from Bitcoin Magazine told me. And all you have to do is get a contribution into one of these open source projects, and they have this list of open source projects. If you search like Bitcoin Magazine Open Source 2023, you can see the list, and Nostr is on there. And there's a bunch of other projects that are pretty good if you're a beginner, like Albi is on there. That was the first place I had contributed.
I wonder, I do have a simple
Yeah, I don't see
contribution to Join Market, Web UI.
Ooh, I think Join Market was on there. I need to like find this link.
So this is an example of like, I just heard of this project and thought it was a cool idea, so went to their repo and found like a really simple bug that they were hoping to fix, and let me see if I can find it. And made this simple change, and it got merged, and now I contributed.
Nice. Yeah, I need to look at this repo. I forgot that because the web UI was like a separate like initiative to build on top of Join Market. So this is probably another good like project to look at if you just have some basic web skills. What is it built in, like React or?
I think it's React, or it's yeah, it is React.
Nice. Yeah, I'll need to look into that. One of these weeks, I want to try and do like a live hack where we try and just find an issue on some open source project and see if we can solve it in a few hours. Because there is kind of a flavor to a specific skill set to like looking through an open source project, looking through the issues, kind of, I guess, vetting it up front to figure out if it's worth getting started on.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could have a whole course on that. But yeah, Join Market, good place to start. But yeah, obviously, right now one of the most happening open source ecosystems is Nostr, out of almost nowhere. Like, gosh, the user growth on Nostr, right? Like, do you know any numbers of like amount of users on Nostr? Like, I know that there were weeks or in days of time where Damus was getting like tens of thousands of users a day.
Yeah. I think from what I forget who, but some people have shared some stats. And I think the like highest peak, maybe, which was pretty recently, probably when Damus hit the app stores, a couple 100,000 users.
Gosh.
Or maybe it's just like 100,000, but that's I think kind of the peak, and then it's dropped down just a little bit as that wave is died a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot of people there.
It's crazy. Yeah, and developers get FOMO too. People don't realize this, but when something like Nostr comes around, if you're a developer at all, especially if you're a PlebDev trying to like, make some noise in any way you can, when something like Nostr comes around, you just instantly, no matter what you're working on, you start thinking about it like, whoa, wonder what I could build on Nostr. Wonder if anyone's done this. And so it's pretty interesting to see that like viral effect happen in the minds of everyone. But yeah, I guess let's look at like a high level overview of Nostr, I guess, just like starting with NIP1. Sorry to have you you're like totally operating the screen this time, so thank you for doing that.
That's all right. Yeah, I was going back to find an old tweet first.
Yeah.
Kind of my intro. Um, I had, yeah, I had kind of heard of it, and then Jack did his donation uh, of Bitcoin to like a development fund, and then that's when I kind of took another closer look, um, and realized how simple this protocol was. So simple that I was like, okay, let me just try to build something real quick to see if I can get some messages. And so then I have this within like a couple hours. I think I had just messages kind of loading in this app, um, which I mean you can see there's no styling and it's a lot of things are not working, but just being able to get something that sort of worked that fast was really cool and kind of made me want to keep working on it.
Yeah. That UI that looked like Enigma. If you
Yes,
ever
that
used
was
Enigma.
what I that was kind of my intro,
Yeah.
and was talking with Super a little bit on there, asking him questions, and he helped out a lot.
Nice. Shout out to
Um,
Super.
yep. So the basic, um, and I don't know how good this will be to. I'll just try to talk through it a little bit. The basic idea with Nostr is you have these objects um, that are sent from relays to clients over WebSockets. So when you log into a client or it's your own client that you're building, as a part of this kind of launch feature or startup feature, you're going to connect to these relays, which are just servers. They can be a server that you run, or there's a lot of public free servers. So here is an example of some relays that this app is connected to right now. I'm not sure how easy it is to see in the screen, but you just give it these URLs, and at this point, there's a lot of really great libraries you can use. The protocol is pretty simple to kind of do all of this, protocol interoperability just like by yourself if you want to write all your own code, or you can use something like Nostr tools for a JavaScript library. Nostr.js is another one. And they just give you some helper functions to connect to relays, publish events, query for events, just to let you kind of, I liked it because I didn't really have to bother with, a lot of this nitty gritty stuff. I could just download this thing and start, building out this app more. But so going back to what I was talking about, connecting to a relay, you can see it gives you these functions, relay and it. And then once you're connected to this server or a relay, you open up, and I guess I don't know if you guys have you talked about like WebSockets on any of the PlebDev projects or streams?
Actually, no, we haven't talked about WebSockets yet. So it'd be good to do like a quick, dirty intro on that idea.
Sure. The basic idea is that instead of requesting data through an API, like a traditional app, you make a GET request to something and then a response with some data. WebSockets let you open this connection to someone else, and then they can just kind of pump data to you, and then you get it instantly if you're listening for it. Mm-hmm. So what happens with Nostr is it's all WebSockets. Everything. There's no REST APIs, or you're not making any GET requests to get any sort of Nostr data. At least right now. I'm sure at some point someone will probably build some like some layer that you can do this on top of Nostr, but at the time you create this subscription, and you can pass it, different metadata about the events you're trying to receive. And anytime this relay server finds something, it'll just send it right to you. So we get this event, and then I can do anything I want with this event. I can save it to my own database or this local state inside of my app, and then use that to put something on the page.
Yeah. And one thing to like kind of color, I guess, the use case of WebSockets is, you imagine if you were building like a social media feed, and we know how to make like API calls all day, but then like, okay, if I'm building a feed and I want it to like be updating, like as stuff is coming in, I would need to like make my GET requests like once a second or something like that. Like I would have to just get. I wouldn't know if there's anything new. I would just have to trigger those events to grab the data each time, versus like with the WebSocket, it's just like making an endpoint. It's very similar to if you make an endpoint that can handle a GET request, but it's this almost channel connection, almost like a lightning channel in a sense, where now anything that happens, you're just automatically receiving it. And, this sub.on event is kind of getting fired. And I guess we actually experienced this a little bit when we were working with the L&D gRPC, because we were able to subscribe to our invoices and listen, like, okay, let us know if there's an invoice event, like if an invoice gets paid that we create or something like that. So it's that same idea, like anytime that you can subscribe to events versus having to build something to like call for them and make sure you're getting them, it's always a lot easier. So even if you haven't worked with WebSockets, like Nostr is definitely an easier to work with tool set using WebSockets than if it was an API, I think.
Yeah, any kind of chat app is similar to social media app they're kind of necessary to build out certain features. And it's just more fun, I think, when everything's in real time. Like on Twitter, and you see the like count increase, someone just like that tweet. That's kind of cool to see. So that's kind of the basics. The basics is you have this object, and that they're passed around between these relays and clients over WebSockets, and then this event object can change depending on the type of event it is. So it can be like just a post event, or it can be a direct message event. That'll have a different kind. This is kind of the identifier for these different types. It can be your following list. So if I follow someone new, I'm going to blast out this new event to the relays I'm connected to, and say, here's this new list of people I'm following. And then when I send it to these relays I'm connected to, when that relay receives this event, it'll send it to the other clients that are connected to it as well. So that's how we get this constant balance of clients, all staying up to date with this new data, which is kind of, it can be a little tricky, but everything's so new that everyone kind of expects that things aren't going to work perfectly at this point.
Yeah, let's look at the NIP one more time, because I kind of want to walk through the basic event object, because this is what like initially Nostr pilled me was. So we can see here, like, this is kind of an example telling you what each field in this event object does. And this event object is essentially Nostr. Like, everything you want to do in Nostr can work on this. And we have, like, an ID field, which is just like a UID that every event gets. You have a signature that you would get from your public-private key. You have your public key, which is, at neb, whatever it is, created at. A lot of that stuff is kind of just, stuff that'll exist on any kind of data object. And then everything that we do in Nostr, almost everything we do in Nostr happens in the kind field, the tags field, and the content field. And that's what's so cool about it, where I think of them as like levels of, almost levels of filtering or levels of description, where like the content is just, it's literally the content you're posting. It's the message you're posting. The tags can be like hashtags. They can be kind of like ats, like replying to someone. And they can just be topic, I guess. Yeah, that's what hashtags are, like topic tags as well. And then at the highest level, you have kinds, which is what kind of message is it? Are you just posting a tweet? Are you posting an event, like you were saying, that you're telling other relays that, hey, I'm following these people now? You can post your profile. That's a kind. That's an event. Kind 4 is encrypted messages. And so the kinds are kind of what's switching between, okay, how are we interpreting this object we're getting? But all of the things you're doing on Nostr, they basically exist in this JSON object with, what is this, seven fields on it. And so that's what was really impressive to me. And then all we're building in Nostr is you're building relays, which are servers that parse these objects and they pass them between each other and they pass them to clients. And then we're building clients that ask for these objects and they just display them in order, let you post them. And so that's what's really cool about it, is like the simplicity of it, and that you can kind of do everything with social media just with these data fields and how you interpret them and parse them.
Yeah, that was kind of similar to what I had felt, where I knew I had heard of this thing and it's like trying to be a new social media protocol.
It sounds complicated.
Just kind of assumed, didn't even really bother looking at it because I'm like, I can't imagine how complicated that is. And then found this, and it's like, I was able to kind of understand it, at least most of it, pretty quickly enough to, okay, let me try to just build something basic to see if it works or not. And then just kind of kept going along with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's a pretty good overview of Nostr. I think, in a sense, because like we've got these objects, they represent every different type of event, and then from the client side, at least, we're just learning how to parse these objects and display them and then send them. And that happens over WebSockets, right? That happens over these WebSocket connections. So yeah, that's a pretty good overview. When it comes to let's talk about Daisy now. So you had kind of built this initial just kind of demo app where you were reading in, Nostr events. Yeah. So like what was the next step after this?
So the first part was, and it's kind of funny going back to see these tweets, but yeah, I had kind of I was getting some messages, and kind of the coolest part about building something on Nostr that I have a tweet about is this one. So because anyone can build this client that's looking at the same data, ideally my client and someone else's client will, for the most part, look the same with the notes that are loaded, because I'm following the same people on both. So for a long time, and I still do this, basically just load some other client and see, what's broken on mine. And that was just like, it was kind of cool because I never had anything like that before. It's always been, I'm building this thing and I'm the only one that's looking at it. So I'm just kind of on my own trying to figure out what's wrong or what I should work on. But with Nostr, because everything's so open, and all of the projects are open source, at least at this point, not only can you just run them side by side to see what's broken, but then you can go into the code bases of these people and see how they're doing it to fix certain bugs or to handle issues. So like a good example is Snort. I've looked at their code a ton to figure out, what something's going wrong with mine. Okay, let me go see what Snort's doing.
So you kind of like, you have your same account with your same follower list or follows list. And so you're essentially able to see the same feed, maybe with a little bit of discrepancy depending on like the relays, like what relays you're connected to.
Yeah, so you can kind of see it's similar. And yeah, you get into this issue where maybe one client is missing a note or just hasn't received it completely. But yeah, you get, it's just a super cool thing while you're building this to be able to compare with all these projects. But so yeah, that's what I did for a while and just kind of kept working on this. I'll go back just to give like a little overview. I don't know if you talked about this, but so this app is built in React Native. So most of what I know is JavaScript and TypeScript and React. I haven't done anything serious with anything else. And React Native is pretty sweet because, I mean, if you know just kind of a basic amount of React, you know enough to build a mobile app with React Native. There's a couple little weird things with, some of the components that you got to use, but it's the same thing. It's just JavaScript and React. And then Expo is kind of this other tool that I'm using, and that lets you build these React Native apps for Android and iOS, and they just handle all of this building and bundling, which is kind of confusing. And it just lets you not, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff while you're just trying to build out this little app. And this is free. It'll basically do anything you need it to. Yeah.
I've never moved an Expo app into production, but I was working on an Expo app like last year, something at GPT-3, and I was just so impressed with it because when you think about getting into mobile development from web, like all of a sudden, most of the concerns come in the form of getting your code compiled and running on Apple and on Android, and kind of like all the configurations and all the things that can go wrong in that pipeline. And what Expo does is it gives you essentially a create React app for a React Native code base. And then it lets you test it across web, Android, and iOS. And that's what I thought was so cool, is like I can have one code base for a web app, an Android app, and an iOS app. And it's cool. This is exactly what you've done. Like when I saw you announcing like Daisy being released, I hopped on it and like tried it out, and then I went right to your code base, and I was instantly just super stoked because I loved that you would just use the most amount of leverage. You used Expo, React Native, you had one code base, it was working on Android, iOS, and your code base was like really simple. And you built it in like 3 weeks or something?
Yeah, I mean, which I think this is kind of at least what I've tried to do, but the pleb way I would say is build the most basic version possible and just share that and kind of release that, and then just kind of keep building it out in the open, slowly getting better a little bit at a time.
Yeah, that is definitely the way.
But I'll do like a quick overview.
Yeah.
So, and some of this will look a little bit different with React Native. You're more used to like React in the web, but Um, Everything's still JavaScript here. So I have this this Redux store, which I'm using to handle all of these notes that are being fetched, so that they're easier to display in the UI. So I'm keeping track of all of these notes. That's where the N in Nostr is from, notes. What is it? Notes over
Notes and other stuff.
notes and other stuff over relays.
Transmit by relays, yeah. Kind of like not a good, it's like one of those acronyms that like they're leaving out the over.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I have notes. That's just all the notes I've received. Profiles, which is all the profile data, and that includes like NIP 05, where you get these little check marks. Your settings, where that's like the relays you have connected to your username and your private key. And then maybe stuff like dark mode if you want that, or I like to add like some Lightning stuff, so that might be your preferred Lightning wallet that it'll link to when you try to send someone something. Mm-hmm. And then subscriptions is what I'm using to manage these different WebSocket subscriptions that I've created, just to try and kind of manage them so you don't end up, accidentally opening like 10,000 subscriptions, and then your app crashes, and then your computer freezes and you need to restart it. But so that's about all there is. It's still, I think a lot of this code is, I'd like to think it's simple, but a lot of it's just because I haven't spent as much time as a lot as the other clients, where they have a lot more features than this one is. But it works, which is, I think, the coolest thing. It works enough where you can use it. You might get a little frustrated using it, but you can use it, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like from a PlebDev standpoint, it's actually kind of nicer to, like, if you're looking for something to work on, to find a project that's in its earlier stages, to where everything there is kind of fundamental.
Yeah, there's way more bugs to find, or just small little improvements to make, even if it's just like, I'm sure there's some typos in here somewhere.
Yeah.
I think there's the chance of finding something small like that you could contribute to is a lot. You have a lot better chance on a newer, smaller project.
Yeah. One thing I just want to mention real quick for those, we still need to do a Redux workshop. I want to do that soon, but basically, like this reducer that Neb has, like, that's sitting at the top of his app with subscriptions and notes, profiles, like, this is basically just a use state. It's like when you use a use state hook for form data or whatever inside your component, except it's a use state that works across your whole app. That's like the big idea of Redux. People always try and like overcomplicate Redux and state management, but really the idea is just to have like use state, and you can use it anywhere in your app.
Yeah. And so you can see, like, I have state. Each of these little slices have their own state, and then in the app you can combine these different slices into the certain data that you're looking for, or just read values from state that you need to. So this is the profiles. You can see I'm storing these profiles by their public key, so that lets me do if I have someone's public key, I can just use that and say, give me the profile with this public key. And so it's trying to simplify that a little bit.
So one question I have, since there's no database here, right?
Yeah.
And there's no server, you're not running your own relay, or maybe you are.
No.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, because you've got like essentially a front end here, but it's an app that works like a full stack app. All you have to do is build the front end, and then when the app is opened, it's brand new, all of this state is completely empty. And once the user I sign in with my private key or whatever, then okay, the state is populated. Now it starts to ask like, hey, give me the user's information from this pub key, and it just starts to populate it from the relay.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about Nostr is I didn't have to worry about, having some database deployed somewhere and, paying for that and just maintaining it. You just don't even have to really worry about that. So the only thing, and this is specifically, this is how it's done in React Native or how I'm doing it, but the only thing I'm kind of storing on the app's device is this setting slice inside of Redux.
Okay.
And so all that is your theme, although I'm not actually using the theme right now, but the user, so your private key, and the relays that you've connected to. I've thought about I could do, store some, profile data so that it's a little bit faster when you start up, but then anytime you start doing that, you get into issues where maybe I already saved this data, but then as soon as I saved it, they updated their profile pictures. Then you need to, write this code to make sure you aren't just holding on to old data that's been updated. But so I haven't really worried about that because on startup, I can just fetch all the data I need to display in this app, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And so the async storage you're using there, that's kind of like local storage in the browser, but you have that on your phone as well.
So I think, because React Native, or with Expo 2, you can do in the web. I'm pretty sure I can just change this to there's some tool, but basically it's local storage. And then it'll just save your Redux store to the browser in between sessions.
Nice.
There's so many tools that are built out that you don't have to do a lot of this yourself.
Yeah. Are you encrypting the private key when you store it?
I'm not.
Good thing. I'm glad I generated a new private key to try out Daisy.
Yeah, I looked into that in some of the other projects I was looking around. I probably should, just to be safe, but from my understanding is it's not helping that much. It would require someone to have your device, but if they have your device, they can just open up the app and then, copy your private key. You already have it right there. So the benefits of doing that they probably still exist, but it's makes the code more complicated, and I haven't really bothered to do that at this point.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to think about as well. When how would you hide the way that you're encrypting it even in your app? If your app's open source, you need some other hosted secret element somewhere else that would be the source of truth for making those encryptions.
Yeah, and then that kind of goes back into I would need this web server and a database probably. I'm storing this private key, and then because I can't just even if you have maybe you guys have done env variables in web projects. You can't do that in these native apps because when it does the actual building into an iOS app or an Android app, it's just the key is just going to be there. So if anyone can decipher this build, they can just read this decryption key in plain text.
Yeah,
so you gotta be careful about how you handle that stuff.
We learned this the hard way actually with the first Pleb wallet. We kind of built it. Well, just because of the limits of the course, I only had so much time. And so we built it and we had all of these secret API keys just sitting in our code base. And I kind of left comments along hey, learn how to store these in an env variable. And then I found out later when we were doing a workshop going over that, I realized wait, this is just a React app only, just a front end only. So no matter what env variables we put inside of here, it's going to get put in the build, and someone would just have to parse that build to find it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a catch-22 there. But this is what's also cool about Next.js, which we've been touching on more, because Next.js kind of has a front-end environment and a server environment inside of it. So you can actually do the env variables and then, shoot it up to Vercel really easily and have Vercel host those secrets as well. So that's kind of the in-between way I found. But yeah, with just a React Native app like this, you would need another server environment somewhere to do that.
Yeah, I'll do just before we wrap up, like intro, like
Yeah.
maybe the node component would be a good one because this is kind of the biggest piece. So each of these little posts, I'm calling them notes here, get rendered by this node component. Here's an example of how I talked about getting the profile from this pub key. So I just have this hook that I created. And then each note has a pub key, and that's like the author of the note. So I'm getting the profile, and this contents, and then just building out this React component. It's the same way you would do it in the web. So I have like an avatar component, and that renders, the little profile picture. If I'm in a thread, I have some different logic on how the UI should be displayed. Getting the node author, the node content. The cool thing with React Native is like if you can build a React app, you know enough to build a React Native app. So most of it really is just the same as building something for the web, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And are you just using the React Native components, like from the React Native library, and just doing CSS basically?
So I'm using, so you do see that you can't, all the styles are kind of in line, and there's different ways to extract that out, but I think that's kind of, I don't really care to do that. But I am using this UI library, React Native UI Kitten. And they just give some look for the components. They give you some components that you can use that just help out. So like text, they have kind of a nice looking font. These card components or button components. And then also these icons. So I didn't really have to do any of the styling other than, taking these components that I found and putting them on the page.
And so you would just kind of use these components and then just add inline styles if you needed to like overwrite anything?
Yeah.
Nice.
So I might take so on this page. So I can see, so here's this, on this home page, you have this little circle button in the bottom to create a new note. And I'm just using their note, so that's how I get this yellow color, or their component. And then it also gives me these certain props like accessory left, which makes it easy to add an icon to the component. And then these icons I'm just using from the same library. And so if I ever need a new icon, like I can search for plus, and that's how I got this icon right here. Or message, that's how I got these little reply icons.
Nice.
And so a lot of the choices I made for this is like just what's the fastest way to get something working. So maybe there's there's other libraries that do certain things better, but this was just the most straightforward for me, and it worked pretty well.
That's cool. Yeah, I always, even when I use UI libraries, sometimes I have a bad habit of like overcomplicating my UI. So I always love it when I can see someone just like they just pulled in the tools and they just used them in the most simple way.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah. I guess before we close out, do you want to show a few of your issues that maybe someone could jump on if they're interested in getting their hands dirty?
Sure. I should have. Because I'm sure some of these would be great issues. I'll just do a little bit of GitHub cleanup right here. So right now, if you go to log out, there's this error, so I can't click the button. You can just accidentally click the logout button, and it'll log you out. So the idea for this is that if you click log out, it'll have this alert, and you can confirm that you do want to log out. And so something I like to do with issues, if I know this code's already used or similar code's already used in the app, I'll just find it and then leave a comment in the issue. So it's like, this is kind of how it needs to be done, just to help out a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, that's always much appreciated. It's good when you can find something like this that's like, okay, this is a part of like a very core flow. So I just need to find this flow and find, okay, at what point does the logout happen? And then interject, okay, now what does an alert look like? Okay, well, I'll put an alert before we log out and have the alert initiate the logout. So these are those good kind of simple issues where you can still get in the app, kind of get in deep there and see how stuff is working, but then still make a simple feature that adds a lot of value.
Yeah, and I can even add yeah, so that's one that's pretty simple to say. This page or this issue should be all right. You would need to like fetch this user's contact list when you view a profile.
It's really slow.
Sure. Some of these, yeah, that's my first issue, and I'm still working on that. Adding sign up. I mean, if anyone's interested, I can spend some more time and try to find some issues that are actually, would be good first issues. There's a lot that I'm sure I just haven't created an issue for it. So if you are interested, just you could send me a message on Twitter or somewhere, and I'll help you out.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's always good too if you're like scoping out issues. Maybe you find one that's like, hey, this looks pretty good, but that's not much of a description on it. I'll usually just like comment like, hey, I'm interested in taking this on. Like, can you provide any more detail? What needs to happen here? Because a lot of times if you're the maintainer, you're making these issues, you're almost just like setting them aside as to-dos that sometimes only you know how to like interpret it fully. So then someone comes along like, hey, I want to work on this. And that's a good way to kind of just start that connection.
Yeah, and it's good to confirm, if you're new to a project, you're trying to help out in some way, to leave a comment just saying, hey, I'm interested in picking up this issue, because sometimes, I know I've done this before, but I've fixed something or made some change that had an issue and just totally forgot to close it. So just kind of leaving some message that you're interested in it might help in preventing you from working on something that's already been fixed.
Yeah.
So that's just something.
For sure. Cool. Well, I guess any any last thoughts for the plebs that are maybe thinking about getting into Nostr, or just they're on their builder journey at all? Like,
Just keep hacking away at stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of just the simplest way to say it is keep trying to build things. Don't get stuck on, trying to make something perfect or good enough to be used by a ton of people. If you get bored of something, just, quit it and start something new.
yeah,
The biggest part is just to keep coding and trying to learn new things and figuring out how things work.
yeah. Stay humble and stack commits. That's what I like to say.
Yes, that's a good way to say it.
Yeah. But sweet. Dude, thanks for coming along, talking through your projects, your journey. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to chat.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in. This is our first, I guess, kind of dipping our toes into Nostr. So probably going to be doing some more Nostr projects in the future. I have some ideas, and maybe we can get some other Nostr builders around. But nonetheless, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Neb, again. And until next time, next Saturday, we'll be around. So stay humble and stack commits, I guess.
All right, see ya.
Later.